Oh, Night Killer. As you may know, I have reviewed this film on here before, but not in as much detail as I'm going to give today. So let's just get straight down to it. I've literally I'm just a couple of hours away from my last watch through of this, and let's just get straight down to it. This is the worst piece of garbage that can be seen in the slasher genre. It's a slasher that takes itself seriously, but it's so ineptly made that it makes Scary Movie look like the original Scream. Anyway, let's get straight down to it. The original scene at the beginning of the film was meant to be the scene where the titles start. However, there's a scene in front, and that was a reshoot. An add-on shoot more than anything, to add more gore. And I say gore, I mean, believe me, it's hardly noticeable. But anyway, the opening scene is this. It starts off in a dance school, doing a rehearsal with this very irate instructor who is so irate that she actually fluffs what she's saying not once but twice during the scene. And I'm not talking about the character, I'm talking about the actress. She actually says, "Look, Charles, you're doing your dance with your head down, and Annie, you need to keep your head up," and she does that twice during the scene and even talks to the camera crew. Then we go to our main girl, Melanie Beck, who is letting her daughter go off to her neighbours for the weekend, and then she gets herself some breakfast when she hears about the third and fourth murder of these two women at this dance school. One of them being the irate instructor. And this unnerves Melanie to the point where she switches the telly off. The television, sorry. And Melanie starts working on her novel, as she's a novelist, at home. And she starts to get phone calls. The first being her ex-husband, who is in a bar somewhere. Now, we only see the back of him, and he's dubbed with heavy ADR. And after that phone call wraps up with her doing horrendous overacting and him doing horrendous underacting and breaking a whiskey glass with his own bare hands, it then immediately cuts back to Melanie, who is in front of a mirror and tending to herself. But then she gets a menacing phone call from our bad boy, the Night Killer. And yes, this guy is costumed. Can you imagine what his costume looks like? Do you think he looks like Ghostface? You're wrong. He looks like Pound Store Freddy Krueger. This is what he looks like throughout the whole entire movie. And yes, the rubber-bladed glove is what he punches through people with. I repeat, he punches through people with rubber blades. Oh. Anyway, he phones Melanie to tell her that he wants to absolutely destroy her at his own free will. This obviously terrifies Melanie, and there's a chase around her house, and you think that would sound intense and awesome. But in actuality, when you see it on screen, it's It's less exciting than watching two snails chase after one another. And then Melanie gets brutally attacked. We don't see the attack on screen, but Melanie does get attacked, and yes, it is supposed to be so brutal that it gives her amnesia, according to Dr. Willow, who is like the Dr. Loomis character in the film. And from what I know, on my limited knowledge of amnesia, amnesia is a condition where you tend to forget the events surrounding the trauma that led to you getting amnesia. But in this film, they explain it as as the main girl, getting amnesia and forgetting about her whole life, forgetting she had an estranged husband, forgetting she had a daughter. Yeah, that is what Melanie's amnesia is like. And yet, in the next scene, she's driving along a main road, somehow discharged, and she's being chased by a vicious creeper, which I will get to in a minute. But this leads to the whole killer needs to go and chase her down, but it leads to another aspect. Why do all the other women get butchered? But here we meet Dr. Willow and Pound Store Danny Glover detective, who I'll introduce in a little bit. Dr. Willow is played by Lee Lively, and he is definitely the best actor in the film. And that's not saying much. He definitely wouldn't win any Oscars from this. But I'll never forget one line that he said, and that is when the detective says to him that this might get the killer to keep on killing people. Dr. Willow says, or it might actually calm the killer down and cause him to stop. I'm like, are you kidding me? Anyway, Melanie is somehow discharged from the hospital and she's driving along. She's chased by this vicious creeper in an off-road Jeep, and he's saying, "Hey, sweetheart." He's pissed as Ancart, and he talks to her in a very lewd way, and she sticks her finger up at him and goes off a side road, and he goes and chases her down that side road into a leisure centre where he follows her into a women's bathroom, and she holds him at gunpoint. She holds him at gunpoint and asks him why he's following her. And he says, "I just want to be friends." And she says to him, "You always want to make friends when you're in the ladies' bathroom?" His reply is, "It can happen." The dude's name is Axel, by the way. There's a lot to go with this guy. Melanie tells him, to strip down to his Speedos, making him go, "What?" And he does so, and then she tells him to throw his clothes into the toilet. Now, he's in the easy access toilet. He is. There's a part on the toilet where you can just throw the clothes to one side. As all this is going on, we get the detective trying to trail the the serial killer. And for a guy who is supposed to be so confident in his job, he always appears downbeat. We have Melanie's neighbours, Sherman and Annie, who are always, looking after they've been given custody to look after the daughter. And Melanie, after the bathroom fiasco, which I won't go into detail because it is hilarious to watch, the end result, Melanie goes onto the beach. She tries to commit suicide by drinking bottles of, and she has the most hilarious CPR. I'm trying to keep up with this, believe me. This leads to the most hilarious monologue by Axel involving Kentucky Fried Chicken. Fried chicken and French fries. And this also leads to him kidnapping her, beating her, and God knows what throughout the rest of the movie. And eventually Melanie realises when her and Axel are out and about, she sees a newspaper where it's got her image as a missing person's image. She sees she's kidnapped. So she realises she's had about 10 million chances to escape. She runs through the city and bumps into her friend Sherman, who agrees to take her home. Sherman takes her home, tells her to sit down, and he'll get a nice cup of tea ready. And the door closes at the front. And of course, this makes Melanie come back to her senses because the front door locked when she got attacked. Anyway, she begins to regain her memories at long fucking last. Anyway, when she starts to regain her memories, the killer returns to her home, and it turns out to be Sherman. Sherman's the one who's been killing all these women. And it's all because he can't have his way with Melanie. So Melanie finally develops a backbone. And she begins to play up to his affections. She begins to play coyly towards him. And when she's flirting up against him, up against the wall, she slowly gets the knife out of his pocket and stabs him in the junk. As this happens, she staggers back, and Sherman ain't in the best, physical aspect right now. And he's readying his gun to shoot her. And he's going, "You die, bitch." When all of a sudden, the next part of the twist comes in, and that is Axel dives through the front window, rolls onto the floor, shoots Sherman about 6 times, and Sherman gets one last look at Melanie before dropping dead. But there's another twist, and that is as all the press are gathering around to talk to the detective and the the shrink outside, they reveal, the detective and the shrink, they reveal that Axel, the ex-husband, who kidnapped and beat and raped Melanie, was actually working with the police. And he was doing all of this to help Melanie regain her memory back. Of course, And yet there's another twist, because at the beginning of the film we saw Sherman drop a present off for Melanie's daughter. Melanie's daughter is still yet to open the present. So, of course, it ends where she opens the present and it's only the same mask that the killer had. So she puts the mask on and goes up in front of her own mirror and says, "Do you recognise me, Mrs. Beck? I'm back. I'm back. Just for you. Just for you." And that's the movie. Fucking bonkers. Oh, God. I mean, there's even more scoops of stupid in the film. Like, I've just totally absolved myself from the rest of it. Like, characters seem to teleport from one side of a room to another. I just, it's beggars belief that this movie got made. And yet, good films get cancelled. Oh, yeah. I mean, for example, if I was writing this film, I would scrap all the, creepy sexual stuff. I would just make it a psychological thriller about a woman who gets attacked and left for dead, by a serial killer. And she's seen what the killer looks like, and she develops amnesia. And it's down to the police and a psychiatrist and her ex-husband, who himself is a burned out cop, to try and help her regain her memories. Oh, God almighty. I mean, what the hell happened here? I mean, apparently the two leads detested each other. And the director had difficulty trying to get them to control themselves. From the brief bits I've heard. There's also aspects like, apparently the director wanted to make a film about intertwining dimensions, but the studio wouldn't have it. And even if you take the reshoots out of the movie is still fucking terrible. Seriously, this movie, why? I mean, the picture that you see on your screens right now, that is literally what I feel like doing upon watching this film. Oh, God almighty. Night Killer. Mind you, maybe some good has come out of it. I mean, I've had a theory that there could be two killers in the film. Sherman and his wife. Because it would explain some of the teleportation style things. Like, as I said, there are scenes where characters seem to teleport. Another aspect I've noticed is that the opening scene starts off in a theatre. Maybe this could have been the inspiration, or one of the inspirations, for Scream 2's opening. Perhaps maybe the writers thought, you know what, you remember that cheap-ass film we watched called Night Killer? Yeah. It was set, the opening scene for that was set in a theatre, wasn't it? Well, maybe we'll set Scream 2's opening in a movie theatre. Yeah, we'll set it in a movie theatre, and we won't make it as much of a disaster as Night Killer's opening scene. I mean, when the female instructor gets punched in the abdomen and thrown off a balcony, you actually see a clear shot of her back, and there's no hole in her back. And when the students see her body fall, they don't even react to it. Just a fucking disaster, this.